This is Ed, and as you can see, you're on Global TV, and today's show is produced by our brand, Global HR News, and this was a town hall about business management today across time, across space, across borders. So welcome, Annette Dernick, Love and Peace in Companies, and tell us about love and peace in diverse teams. That must be a challenge.
Yes and no, because if I really have what I call heart-to-heart communication, then I accept everybody as he or she is. And then it's quite common or quite usual or not so difficult to really accept the other person as he or she is, as a really wonderful being as we all are. And yes, at the same time, I know that in my cultural background, there are things that I learned from childhood that are not so easy to, let's say, kind of ignore. So, for example, it starts with the greetings. Am I shaking hands? Am I giving a big hug? Am I giving what the French call a baiser on the right, on the left cheek? And so, for example, if somebody who approaches me and whom I don't know, and he kind of already hugs me, then it can really be a little bit challenging, even though that I regard everybody as being a wonderful person.
Well, Ken, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very interesting, particularly in the days of, well, hopefully post-COVID, but not really, where all of that physical contact has changed, where people, maybe it's a fist bump now. And on the other side, in terms of hugging, people have to be very careful with that. It can be unwanted physical contact. So, we do like people, as you say, love and peace in the workplace. And yet we have to be very careful on that aspect of it and try to read the person, read the room, and err on the side of being a little bit more cautious and careful, because we don't want to be off-putting, or someone will walk off and say that was really inappropriate. I think after people get to know each other, then it might become a little bit more acceptable. But we just have to be careful, while at the same time being warm and engaging and outreaching, and certainly striving to interact positively with everybody that we're working with.
Thank you, Dr. Ken Lloyd. Eve, what do you think about love and peace in diverse teams?
Well, I'm the Tigger in the room. I'm the one that comes bouncing into any environment, and I'm the one that's shaking your hand or giving you a hug or whatever, bringing that energy into the room. I just love people and I love life. But Ken, you are absolutely right. You have to read that room, and you got to know that Annette is just not in the mood for all of your energy. And that's when you tone it down and you're just like, hey, Annette, how are you doing? How's your day? Tell me about your company, where you've just got to regulate who you are and how you approach people. And I think that makes you a wise person in those types of business settings.
Great. Okay, Dr. Natalie from Hamburg, welcome again.
Hello, nice to be here. Nice to see everybody. I think I know half of the people. It's exciting.
Yes, and Patrick Landers from Dallas. Welcome again, Patrick. And Mr. Andrew Elliman. What a nice surprise. Hello. So Patrick, briefly just introduce yourself.
All right, Patrick Landers. I am a mobility tax partner with Ernst & Young. I've been working with cross-border mobility for the last 28 years, and I recently returned from an international assignment I had in India, living there with the family for 3 years, and then commuting in a role post-COVID for another 3 years after that. So good to join you here today.
And from London, Andy Elliman, thank you for being with us again.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Andrew Elliman from the AGS group. I think I know quite a few of you on the screen, so it's good to see you all again. And I do, excuse me, I'm sitting in an open office, so if it gets a bit loud, I'll put it on silent for you guys, okay?
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let me just admit Tatiana here. 1 second, please. Okay. This is going to be a really dynamic conversation. Welcome, Tatiana. Welcome, my friend.
Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm a minute late. Had to
Yes.
figure out how to unmute myself.
Yeah, there'll be detention for that.
Well,
So Tatiana is a 20-year plus professional in talent assessment, executive leadership. Please go a little bit deeper than I just did and introduce yourself.
I'm a leadership coach and talent advisor to organizations, large and small. Anyone that has people, but has the potential to have people problems. And I help them essentially address them and fix them, develop their leaders. So the topic of discussion lately, the most popular one is leadership DNA and how to identify uniqueness in each leader and help them kind of embrace what makes them unique and different, craft their own path to greatness and leadership. So that's been a very successful side of the business in the last probably 12 months.
Yeah. Okay. So recently you put together what you called an Advent calendar, certainly connected with the holidays, but what else did you do with that? And there was a big success for you.
Yeah, leadership wisdom Advent calendar. I thought, well, what can I do that was different as a gift to my clients? And I thought, well, I'll limit it to clients. So let's give it to the whole audience on LinkedIn, clients and prospects and networking partners. And we had great success. Just little snippets of wisdom, many of which I've picked up through participating in these masterminds with Ed's help. I was introduced to some amazing people and picked up a few quotes, interesting quotes on leadership here and there. So we tried to compile all the most popular ones that resonated with us, and we put them into that Advent calendar. And it was, again, just, it confirmed to me how much need there is in the market for leadership development, for younger leaders in particular, moving into these roles because they were next in line, not because they were well developed through, well-defined succession plan, and they went through some kind of program. They don't know what they don't know. And so as they're out there seeking knowledge and we're all providing that knowledge to them, they really appreciate it. And another piece to it is executive coaching. Every leader could get a little help connecting the knowledge that they're getting from all of us out there, thought leaders, and participating in programs, connecting the knowledge with wisdom. How do you internalize it and turn it into wisdom? Because, knowledge is a rumor until it lives in your body. And so that's the role of the coach, to extract what's really going to resonate and help this leader and help them create new habits for success.
Well, I think all of us are going to use that quote you just gave us about knowledge being a rumor. That is funny. But really, really descriptive. Yeah. Okay. So Eve Nasby, would you please self-intro yourself? Because you're going to do it a lot better than me. She has many companies that hire her or retain her services to run part of their business. Eve?
Yeah, so I'm so honored to be here, you guys. It's great to meet everyone from all over the world. I love Germany. Was there a couple of years ago. Yay. So our company becomes the employer of record for other people's businesses, and that just frees them to be able to grow their business. We do it for a really low price point. Nobody in the United States is doing it the way we're doing it, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. We grew 326% last year. But my background, I've got over 30 years, you can count my wrinkles, of experience in HR, staffing, talent acquisition, own my own.
I want to say that in this camera that I have, you can't see any wrinkles on anybody, including me.
Oh, yes. We love your cameras a lot. So yeah, I've done lots of stuff in media. I had three TV shows here in San Diego, 3 radio shows. I write an article that goes to 4 million active duty spouses and veterans every single month on what's next. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here and just to learn from you guys. There's a lot that we can do to help each other succeed, and then to reach out and help our communities succeed. And I think that's what we're all about.
Okay, let's go back to Dr. Ken Lloyd. He's an author and a coach, very well known in the LA region and beyond. And I think this is the 4th program you've been on. Thank you very much, Dr. Ken Lloyd. Amongst other things you've done is written a book and coach on jerks at work and how to contain, get rid of, or exit them, I guess is the fancy word.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's how to deal with them, and ultimately, hopefully, either have them change their behaviors that are high in jerkhood, or to somehow either remove yourself, because nobody needs to be working for a mean or abusive or harassing manager, or implement some change in that person's behavior to bring it into some state of acceptability. But we've all had the experience of working with people who, I don't like to label and call them jerks, but that's really what they are. And either we suffer with them, which I do not like to see, and I don't think anyone I would say in this virtual room would accept that, but rather, what are we going to do about this? How can we implement some positive behavioral change here, either in the individual who's creating the difficulties for us, or frankly, in our own behavior? I don't obviously recommend running away from situations, but there are times when, if it can't be changed, and you have to take care of yourself, your health, your wellness, because it's not just affecting your work, it's affecting your whole life, and on the job and off. And you have to really take care of that. And also tying in with jerks are people who totally ignore the reality of diversity and inclusion. And those are bona fide jerks. And today there's a lot more attention on dealing productively and positively with that, tying in with the overarching topic for today's discussion. But yeah, people that don't adhere to that are definitely engaging in behavior that would fall under that negative classification.
So we're going to get back to you in just a minute. Patrick Landers, thank you for your time. I know that EY is super busy now with tax season, but also you guys have been really wonderful sharing information about the quote unquote transformative times that we're all working in right now, living in. Patrick, would you like to talk about what EY is doing with these surveys and these special broadcasts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a couple of things, but I would say, one of the areas, obviously, in the mobility space, we started doing, kind of coming out of COVID, these survey that is called Mobility Reimagined, and it's basically a survey of kind of corporate mobility managers and professionals around the world that are looking into kind of what are the trends they're seeing in the workplace. And what I will say is, there are definitely it's a changing, mobility's always kind of been changing. I will say, in 28 years in mobility, it seems like every year there's always discussion of trends and things, but I will say that really the pace of that change has really accelerated. If we look at now, not only hybrid assignments and others that are, as we've transitioned, post-COVID now, where there's an expectation that, people can literally work anywhere in the world. We're also seeing governments come in and crack down on that some, or at least require that there's better tracking and visibility to your employees and where they're working in the world. And so that kind of the survey that we go through and some of the data that we go through as a result of that survey, we then put together we've got a workshop coming up in May, actually, where we're going to talk through some of that with, again, sessions where we work together with our clients and we present on what different companies are doing in that space. One thing I would highlight, and I think we've all we're overwhelmed almost with news about artificial intelligence and what the impact of that might be, especially in the mobility space. And I will say, it's an area that we've definitely seen, there's very, very quick pickup for, value that you can get out of artificial intelligence and things like, managing your payroll and questions that are coming up from that. There's, kind of HR queries, and there's some things coming up from that, although there's always kind of regulatory challenges there as well. But I will say, when we look at the mobility space, one of the areas I'm really excited about is the prospect of having artificial intelligence supplement what we're doing from a cross-cultural perspective, from a destination services perspective. When you think about moving from one location to another, there's a lot going on, especially if you're moving a family, you're trying to think about school, you're thinking about housing, you're thinking about all of the things that impact an international move, and just trying to get familiar with what the kind of, the customs and culture and just the aspects of what's going to happen in the destination for, each member of the family is something that is a huge aspect of the move, and is also something that from a corporate perspective, a lot of times it's the family and the spouse and the children that get kind of left behind in that discussion. So we're exploring some things with artificial intelligence to see where there's opportunities to harvest data and supplement what we're doing already from a destination services perspective. So
thank you very much. I was really honored to have EY host my live conference back in November 30 at the EY Global Center in Hoboken, New Jersey, across from Wall Street. And Patrick, I've been invited back by Amit to do it again on May 14, which is, I think, the week after your internal event.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. I'm really happy about that. So, Dr. Natalie, how's your daughter? She had a pop knee from what, playing soccer, football,
Basketball and
basketball.
swimming and writing and dancing. But right now we've got a protective sleeve, and we'll see how it plays out.
Right. Okay. So I just saw something this morning that you're going to be featured in an International Women's Day event. So do you want to chat about that briefly?
Oh, sure. And it's interesting because I'm actually also connecting you to two of the people in charge of those organizations. Yeah, I happen to have been connected to Voice Aid Association, which is located in Germany, and they have sustainability projects. One is called Depeche. And as part of that, we are putting on, I can say we because I've now become a member of the board as well, we're putting on an event for International Women's Day. And it's not your regular event. It's more like what we're having here. It's a roundtable discussion to collect thoughts from all the different women who come actually from all corners of the globe for this event. We have 4 groups, and it's just, I think it's needed for the women, for men and women to come together, because we always invite men as well. And also, since we're talking here about companies and coaching and training and so forth, it's important that we come together and just sometimes speak from the heart and lay everything out on the table. And then look at the end or in the beginning, depending on how you organize it, at what do we want more of? What is it that we want, and how can we get there? So I'm honored to be, number one, a host and also contributor to this. And I think a lot of the women there will have very interesting points of view. Thank you for asking.
You bet. And we'll come right back to you, because you have a unique approach to helping not just women, but people go through transformative times. And we are all living in one of those right now. Andy Ellerman, you are European head of business development for a worldwide company. So you have your hands full with cross-cultural teams, don't you?
Yeah, we see it all the time. So more now than ever, because things have changed. I think, like Patrick said earlier, AI is playing a big part in that at the moment. With all the companies we're talking to, they're exploring how that can work and how can that interact with all the maybe what they call the softer side of the relocation, but it's really important. And we're seeing a lot of things through AI which are people keep talking about it. It's here and it's happening, and it's really interesting what we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, interesting. So Patrick, how should we optimize the beauty and the depth of a cross-cultural team? And then I want to bring Annetta into this because that's her specialty also.
Yeah, I will say, so one of the things I had the privilege of doing while I was working in India was I was overseeing a team of about 3,000 professionals that worked with, we had over 58 different countries that we were supporting with that team. And what we really got the opportunity to see, especially when you think about kind of building a diverse global team, is that there's so much value in bringing in other perspectives to your team and how you provide services. And I will say, when you do tax returns or immigration filings or other things, sometimes we get caught up in the regulatory aspect of it, and we miss the kind of the rich experience that people bring to the conversation and the value they can provide as a global teammate. And so I will say, one of my biggest accomplishments while I was working there was, we had a team of individuals that were supporting a team out of the UK, and just navigating some of the challenges, which my small contribution to the Indian British relations is probably not noted anywhere in history, but from a firm perspective, it was a huge step forward in just getting teams to really value and see the insight they could get from their colleagues. And that it was, even though it was we had a center in India and in Argentina and other locations around the world, just getting people to work together and to respect their colleagues from a global perspective, and not simply looking at the transactional side of it, but looking at the human element as well, to say, if I'm focused on the human relationship here, then the actual transactional work will follow. You will get good results out of whatever transaction you're trying to, if you're trying to do a tax return, you're trying to provide support for HR, you're providing support for other areas, you will get good results. But you have to look deeper into it and not just monitor your metrics and your SLAs and others, because from a transactional perspective, if you got humans that are providing a service, you've always got to consider what that human element is.
Okay, let's go to Annetta. Peace and love in diverse teams. Is that possible?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Patrick. And in my opinion, the very important thing is to really have somebody who integrates all the team members and who is aware of maybe misunderstandings that can occur. At the beginning, I've already been talking about, let's say, how to greet each other. And love and peace also means that I respect everybody. And yes, that I'm also cautious, that I'm not kind of putting my culture as the one and only, and instead to be open to other points of views and to other ways to talk, to work. And I've been working with so many international project teams, and for me it was always great to see how there was the growth of the whole team, and creativity. And I also have to admit that I really love to work with international project teams, because I have learned so much from other cultures, and sometimes I stick to some, let's say, typical thing of one culture, and I still do it here at home because I love it so much. And for me, it was always, it's enriching. I think that's the right word for it. And therefore, I'm also grateful here for our community, because I really love our talks and to share different points of view, and to also grow together and have a common point of view, or to share opinions.
So let's go back to Andy Elliman in London. Andy has introduced me, thankfully, I'm grateful, to the bank, Global Trade Bank, HSBC in London, and has brought me into their headquarters tower and in the financial district. Coming up now for the third time HSBC and AGS are going to top sponsor and host me in an international meeting on April 23. Andy, how do you manage your teams across Europe to be continuously active in their local businesses and contributing to the group?
That's an interesting question, and one that you have to approach, I think, first on the local entities. You know, by understanding the local cultures and how they work is a big key to actually, one, understanding how they're going to work with you. Because what sometimes we take as a, for instance, you may take something in one country and think it's very rude the way they've spoken to you, but actually they're just very direct. They're not rude at all. They're actually being more honest about this is the kind of way we want to do. Like coming from the UK, we do dance around the question quite a lot before we get to what we actually mean. Whereas like you go into some countries, they're very direct and they tell you, we'll just get to the point and tell you it. So when you're running teams like that, first and foremost, it's not about what they're going to do from a work perspective. It's how are they going to understand what you're trying to achieve, and also make sure that they really buy into what you're doing. Because if you work as a team, right, and you have different aspects from that team, the reason you work with them is because they bring something more to what you offer already. And I think from my perspective, managing the teams is probably the easiest part of what I do, because I don't see them as people I work with. I see them as people that I really want to get to know and understand. And then before you know it, we are a true team. So it's very different to the way that you would see from a work perspective. But yes, you've got to achieve your goals. So running the teams, you've got to be in contact with them. You've got to understand them. They've got to understand you. And I just think, you know, you've got to have a leeway between the two to understand what they're trying to achieve. Then you take that to your market of what you're trying to sell to, because I'm in a development role. But actually, you need to understand your client and what are they trying to achieve, and what are the barriers that they're going to have going into certain locations that they may not understand. You know, there's a saying, isn't it, that a square peg doesn't fit into a round hole. Well, if you take that approach and actually break that down, you can really go through the process with the different entities around the group. So for Europe, I take that, but I also take that perspective for the global part of my job as well. So, you know, we're in a lot of countries. So for me, I get to speak to colleagues all around the world. But screens, we feel like we're all in the same room, right?
So for those of you who don't know Andy, he has climbed Mount Everest and has put himself through torturous training to learn how to swim, and also jump in the English Channel and aim for France. And he has been doing other things. I mean, he's a crazy guy, but he lives what he talks about. And you should make sure you communicate with Andy right now while you have the chance, and make a relationship begin. So, Andy, tell us about the 7 steps. I think it's 7.
Yeah. So
handling a major project.
So this is something I came up with back in 2010 now, actually. So back in 2010, I was trying to, I got the opportunity to climb Everest. And I was in no shape or fit or form. I'd had no money to do it. So at first I was like, how can I do this? And I then went on a 5-year plan to put together to climb to the summit of Everest. And throughout that whole process, my whole career changed. I went from a normal sales guy to being a sales director in the UK to heading up the rest of Europe for sales as well. But on the back of that, when I tried to climb Everest, I realized that the 7 steps that I was taking to climb Everest, it was not much different in the work space and how you approach companies and how companies should be acting on their self. So the first one for me was like the vision, you know. So for me, I had Everest as the vision. So if you imagine the vision from there, I already knew what I wanted. I wanted to stand on top of the world. right? Now, if you're a company, you have a vision. You know where you want to take it. You're top of the world, whatever it looks like is there, and you're waiting to do it. But then to do that, you needed the second part of that was actually the support, you know, because without support, I couldn't do it. And support for me came in many various different aspects. You know, I needed support from my family because it's a big thing to go off and climb a mountain. It's probably the most selfish thing you can do. And I nearly never come back because I nearly died in 2015 on the mountain. I got caught in the worst earthquake Nepal has ever seen. So I didn't reach the summit, but it's led me into this whole place now that I take on the biggest challenges there are in the world. And everyone thinks I can't do it, and I give it a go, and I either succeed or I don't succeed, but I reach it in my own goal. So it's a way of approaching. But also in those steps, you know, and I will send you guys the steps afterwards as well. There is, you need the support. You also need to know what route you're taking. So for us, when we did Everest, we were trying to do the summit from the south side, from the Nepalese side. And we realized that I couldn't get any sponsorship, right? So sponsorship was a big thing because I couldn't pay for it, right? And we needed to do something. So we went for a world record, which we found the highest, flattest platform on the earth on Everest at 7,000 meters. And we decided we were going to throw the biggest dinner party ever held at that height. So we changed to the south side. We went from the south to the north side. So we went from China. In hindsight, that saved my life because the earthquake wiped out the south side and we survived on the north. But it's all about knowing your route. So when you're in a company, you need to understand, okay, you've got the vision. What's your route? You've got the support. The support could come from, for me, it was family. Support was sponsors. Support was work. But for you as a company, you know, your support needs to come from your organization. So understanding who are the key players in, if it's a global mobility program, you know, who do you need to be able to make sure that that works in the right way? You know, you could have the greatest mobility team ever, but if you don't have buy-in from the top, it never happens. If you don't have buy-in from different regions around the world, it's never going to work. So you need to make sure you stick to the route, but also throughout my steps that I'll send you, one of them is about knowing your limits. So knowing your limits for me was, okay, the earthquake put a stop to it. I couldn't go up, I couldn't go down. I got stuck on the mountain and we had to work out how we was going to get off that mountain at the time. In hindsight, if you know your limits within your organization, you will also know how far you can take it, how far you can push people, and know when to stop pushing them. Because some companies will roller coaster through and then they get lots of casualties along the way, which is not what you want. What you want to do is encourage them, bring them into your environment to understand why is that certain region not catching up with this part of the region and how does that work. So yeah, the 7 steps that I put together really came out. For me, it was all about Everest, right? So it wasn't about work. But then I realized actually it fits pretty much everything I do on a daily basis. And this is how I run the teams that I work with across Europe. We all follow the steps. You know, we have to understand, everyone has to understand what the goal is, right? Everyone needs to support each other. Everyone needs to know their limits. And it's a really interesting concept. And when I hear people talk all the time, it's like, if you compare, it's a strange thing to say, but when I was doing this, I'd never thought about work. It was all about me being on the summit. But the lessons I learned there were more valuable than I've ever learned in any workspace that I've taken into work now. And since then, I've gone on to improve that and change that. I mean, I went back in 2018 and broke the world record for the highest dinner party. In 2018, my wife said, no more high altitude because she nearly died. And I said, I've got to do something at sea level. So my biggest fear at that time was water. I couldn't swim. And in 2018, I announced to the world that I was going to swim the English Channel and swim to France from England. And everyone thought I was mad. And then we had a pandemic in between. So I started to learn to swim. And then the swimming pools all shut. So everyone said, oh, you're going to have to wait. And I said, well, I can't wait. So I then started swimming down a river every day for 2 years. And then I took on the channel, and I got halfway. I didn't get all the way. I got halfway. I did 11 miles out of the 21 miles that you're meant to do. But if I'm honest, that was, for me, it was a mind-changing moment. But again, this is where I go back to a working environment, is know your limits, but also know how far you can push it. You know, you've got to keep on track. That's another thing. You've got to plan your route. You've got to make sure that you know the vision and you know the outcome, the summit. And the summit is not always what you think it is. For me on Everest, the summit was all about standing on top of the world, but actually it wasn't. It was actually, the summit got me to where I needed to be able to do the things I do now, which changes everything that I do, the way I approach things and look at things. So yeah, quite interesting.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, everybody, make sure you connect with Andy on the chat thing. So Dr. Natalie, you help primarily women, but others, including me, deal with challenges, just like Andy talked about.
I don't think I can do it quite as well as Andy because I don't have that track record. I'm also not sure that I would want to. In some ways, the swimming is definitely not my idea. But I think, you know, using what Andy just said, there are a number of very important aspects, such as knowing your strengths and weaknesses. We all know that, but also setting boundaries. You know, how far will you get pushed? How far will you push others? Because when we look at it, if we're in a team, there's always a little bit of this pushing going on. Well, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, am I pushing too far? So I think setting boundaries is also crucial. And the other thing that I loved what Andy was just saying is, I call it, you know, shifting goals or shifting perspective, because a lot of things that we do really just have to relate or have to have ground in, how do I look at it? It's not right, it's not wrong, it's not that goal or this goal. It's really about, how do I look at it? Can I phrase my question differently? Can I approach it differently? And just recently, I rewatched a movie with my daughter. Yeah, it was with the late Robin Williams, and he did something that I used to do when I was still teaching as well. You know, he made the students get up on the desk, stand on top of the desk to get a different perspective. And I think that is absolutely crucial. So, or, you know, to use what Robert F. Kennedy always used to say, you know, quoting someone else, some people ask why, I ask why not. So instead of looking at things from the perspective, it's all bad, let's look at what is good, what is working. And one of my favorite questions always, regardless of whether I'm coaching individuals or teams or leadership, it doesn't matter. It's always, how is that going for you? Because that has you take inventory. They say, how is that going for you? It's not judging. It's just saying, okay, these 4 things work well. These don't work so well right now. These really upset me. Great. Now we have a base from which we can operate. And I think that is really crucial. The next question always is, how do you feel about it? And that's also what I heard already from everybody here. We deal a lot with feelings. And when we look at leadership and leadership coaching right now, we understand that most people at every company that I've been training at or that I've been connected to, they want to be recognized more as human beings. So the emotional intelligence, as we like to call it, is crucial. And that combines, when we're looking at, you know, Maslow's hierarchy, for example, that combines basic needs as well as goals. So basic needs and personal needs are connected, and then we've got the professional needs. So on the one hand, like you just asked me, Ed, how is your daughter doing? Yes, that's important at work. Do you know what your other team members are going through? And as a leader, you have to divulge that information as well. When you come into work and you're not feeling great or you have a headache, you may, my advice would be, share that with your team and say, sorry, people, today, give me a minute. I'm like not feeling well, or I almost had an accident on the road. Just give me a moment to breathe. I'll come back out in a minute. That makes you truly human, which you are. And by you being honest, the others will also be honest. And that creates a very different working atmosphere that I don't think can be underestimated. And whether you do it at home or in a team or with individuals in other instances, it always comes back to us being human beings. And that's what matters. And I think that's what Annette also talks about when she's talking about peace. Eve mentioned that, Tatiana mentioned that. It always comes back down to it. And you know what Patrick mentioned, you know, taxes. I so feel the people because I have to do taxes in 2 countries and it's driving me insane because everybody's doing different laws and different rules. But that's just part of it. So if I can outsource that because I know it's not what I'm good at, then awesome. Let me focus on what I'm good at and let my other team members do what they're great at.
That's
So that would be, I
exactly
think, my
what Eve
long-winded
does.
answer. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Eve,
Yes.
you want to comment?
Yeah, I would just say what I so resonate with what you just said, Dr. Natalie. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have as employers is hiring people that are like us. And that's the opposite of DEI, right? It's the challenge is hiring somebody that that keeps us out of our comfort zone. We want to hire people like us because we like us. Face it, you like you. And that's what we seek to find is people who are just like us. But there's a humility that lies that we have to embrace to hire someone who is not like us. And hiring to our weaknesses means you have to first understand and know and acknowledge what your weaknesses are. So that's what I would add to that.
Yeah. Okay. Tatiana, you're an expert in talent assessment and onboarding and developing leaders.
Well, this is where assessment actually ties well into everything that's been said up to this point, because we often talk about potential or hiring on potential, and there's a whole, I'm sure Eve, you have a whole long list of things that people should not be doing while hiring, while selecting the right person. So one of the things that we do is help organizations hire the right person by job matching them, actually measuring who the person is and then matching them to jobs. And that eliminates many of the, or at least reduces many of the unconscious biases, one of which is hiring in your own image. And also helps each hiring manager understand the limitations to what Andy, what you were talking about. So it is so important. I talk to leaders who truly believe that anybody can do anything given enough practice, enough coaching. Well, not really. It's to a degree. I always say people are like rubber bands, and actually carry rubber bands with me to demonstrate that everybody has a stretching capacity. So who we are, our leadership DNA, our occupational DNA, our makeup is not a straitjacket, certainly. But let's measure what that is. What are your natural tendencies, your strengths and weaknesses, and more importantly, limitations? How far can you stretch the rubber band so that then as an organization and as a team, your colleagues, you can collaboratively, deploy appropriate and timely support to each person that's going to be tailored to their needs instead of painting things with wide brush strokes or applying the same solution to everybody on the team. As often happens, for example, I was just talking to somebody at a networking event last night. Leadership training program was applied to all leaders. And the intent was that we're going to retain our leader. We want to retain our leaders. So in order to retain our leaders, we hear people talk about this all the time. We need to invest in them. How do we invest in them? We grow them. We provide training and upskilling. Okay, sounds great. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, we're going to pick this program. Everybody goes through it. aren't they excited? They should be grateful to our organization, our leadership team, because we're putting everybody through this leadership team. Half of the leadership team that was invited, or middle and upper management that were invited, were ready to quit. They went to update their LinkedIn and resumes because it was so impersonal. It was so irrelevant to their individual talents. Nobody bothered to ask, what do you care about? What will keep you in this, engaged in this organization? And what do you need for your growth? What are your goals? So it's just, it's amazing how people assume. We all assume. I guess we're wired to assume. It's one of the biases we all hold. And there was another thing that Andy said that was really interesting. In my coaching practice, I often talk about not being attached to the outcome, but in my conversations, it's more along it's in the context of having difficult conversations. So when you're about to go into a meeting with a group of people or one-on-one, you don't want to be attached to the outcome because it's going to distract you from being present in the moment. And it will distract you from being able to see all possibilities. And really being open. And Andy, your story about being attached to the outcome, want to stand at the top of the world, and what you've discovered along the way, that's such a fantastic example. I think I might steal it and use it with some of my clients. It's just such a perfect illustration to that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, this is a wonderful conversation. Dr. Ken Lloyd and I had a talk show just recently about the idea of myopia. In other words, can't see clearly about what you're supposed to be doing, losing your train of thought. Ken?
Yeah, it's so interesting. What I'm hearing that was so interesting across this discussion is the word individual. Understanding the individual, respecting the individual, loving the individual, focusing on that individual's needs and desires and motivations and goals, and building with that nice. It just came across so clearly. And just looking for a minute about the kinds of groupings that are being put together, the research shows, studies on these diverse groups show that they are more creative, which has clearly come out, and that you specifically use the word creativity. These groups are more creative. We bring in diverse entities, diverse thinking and approaches to problems. We will get more creative solutions, and actually engagement goes up. And that's so important these days for employees to be more engaged, fully engaged in their work, and committed to it, committed to the values and the ethics and the climate where this entity is going. And frankly, it does tie in, as Ed is asking, to myopia. Marketing myopia, being overly focused internally. We're so great, we're so cool, we got the best products and services. Forget about our customers, forget about the market. And then suddenly, I'll give you an example. I was working with a client who said, I don't want to be the last buggy whip maker in town. And I really like that quote, because if that company is engaging in marketing myopia, they're making the best buggy whips ever. But guess what? You just got passed by a car. He didn't want to be that entity. I kind of like that thinking in terms of myopia, in terms of looking at marketing, but also in terms of looking at other people. We talked a little bit about this with a previous discussion with Annette. We talked about management myopia, which is kind of a term we made up, but not so focused internally that we miss what else is going on with our people and in our organization. And I just hear so much of that today. And really the steps that Andy mentioned are just more carrying us in that direction. And life is a journey. And listening to Andy talk, it really helped bring that into even more focus. So yeah, there is a time to be myopic. I've got to, you're doing accounting at EY, and we're going to look clearly at each number, each detail. But we're looking beyond that at the business, at the world, at the industry, at diverse teams in different countries that we're dealing with. So we really want to have both. We want to be myopic, we want to be farsighted, and certainly all-inclusive.
Wow, this is great. It's 47 minutes after the hour. We're going to need to end this in about 5 or 6 minutes. And you'll all receive a copy of this program later in the day today. And feel free to send it around the world to your own networks, because it's really a terrific conversation. It's for the ages, and this stuff that you guys have been talking about needs to be broadcast into every company everywhere, big or small, because there's so much truth and honesty. Back to Annetta, peace and love. Does this sound phony?
Yes, to some people, yes. And I would like to completely agree with you, Ken, because what you said, and also Tatiana, that and also the others, that's what really, it's so essential. And what I mean with love and peace is to appreciate the other person. And the crucial thing is it starts with myself. When I look in the mirror in the morning, am I kind of criticizing myself, or am I fully aware of myself? Do I love myself as I am? And am I peaceful inside? And when I'm peaceful inside, then I can be peaceful with others as well. And that's really with which I coach company leaders and CEOs, and where I'm holding aspiring speeches to really bring this to the world. And it has so many positive aspects. I always say peace creates value, because people really love to work in the company. This attracts more customers. And if the fluctuation is less, then the costs are less. If you have more customers, I don't have to tell you that also the revenue and the profits rises. And there's also an immaterial aspect. Because when employees and also leaders come home in the evening and they are content and satisfied with what they had done during the day, then they start the evening with a happy mode. And this really contributes to peace. And in my opinion, especially leaders and also entrepreneurs, they have the opportunity, and in my opinion, also the responsibility to take care of the employees and to thus contribute to more peace in the world.
Well, I think we ought to hold hands and sing Kumbaya or something. This is great. Thank you all for being on Global TV Talk Show. It's been wonderful. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
all. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.